The time has come. Today, we're gonna be throwing my brand new engine into my 240SX with the fresh new engine bay. So I took the engine off of the stand and kind of set it down on this tire, and now we're gonna attack the flywheel and the clutch, which I have a brand new White Bunny clutch I'm gonna be throwing in there. So let's get that out. All right, so step one is I put the heat shield onto the back of the engine, and now we're gonna be throwing the flywheel on, and I'm gonna put a little bit of red Loctite on the flywheel bolts. And yeah. All right, so I got the flywheel bolted on. Now I just have to tighten up the bolts, and in order to do that, we gotta hold the front with a 27. So I'm gonna need another person to help me out with this. So that means we gotta wait for my friends to come.
The shoes?
We got the transmission in. Now the engine's ready to go in the car.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are jacking her up. We caught a big one. It's like a forbidden leaf blower or an elephant.
Two days later.
Alright guys, so been a few days. As you can see, the engine's in the car. We didn't record too much just because it was becoming such a pain in the butt. Me and my girlfriend were able to get the car halfway put in, and then I was having a lot of trouble with the J-Replace OEM mounts. They didn't want to line up so easily. I didn't think it was going to work, so I ended up throwing on the ISR mounts, the poly mounts that I had on before. So here's what we got cooking with the new engine in the car. So it looks pretty cool. I still have to put on the trans mount, so that's what we're gonna be working on right now. So I got a jack stand under here to hold up the transmission, and I'm gonna take out the mount, because right now I just put the mount here to hold the transmission up, but it's not actually bolted into the mount for the trans. So we're gonna take this out. So here's the trans mount, and this looks pretty ugly. So with the power of editing, much better, brand new. All right, so now I just disconnected the ISR poly mount that I was using for my transmission. I'm gonna be swapping to the J-Replace OEM trans mount just to try and save my transmission, because I'm not swapping the transmission yet, and I want this thing to last as long as possible. So that'll bolt up right there. I got some hardware here that I can use, so yeah, let's put that on there. So now we got this J-Replace OEM mount on the transmission. Now we can put the piece back on here. Now we can work on some of the other things, like I got a new drain plug and a new fill plug, and I got a new rear seal for the trans, so we can replace all of that. All right, so I just popped out the old rear. It's destroyed because I destroyed it. But I popped out the old rear trans seal, and we have a new one here. So we're just gonna pop this one in, make sure it's nice and flush, and everything will go good. So that's the rear trans seal replaced, and now we're gonna move on to just replacing the fill and drain plugs. So I just replaced the drain plug with the new one I have. I'll replace the fill plug when we fill up the trans. Yeah, it looks pretty good. All right, so I was having so much trouble with that J-Replace trans mount. Nothing was lining up. So I just ditched all the J-Replace OEM mounts, and we're still gonna rock the ISR poly mounts for everything and pray for the best, because at least this way it lines up. But yeah, now the trans is pretty much good to go. So we're looking good. Now moving on to engine bay stuff, we got a few things we got to get done. One thing I started to do was I took this pipe that comes out of the throttle body, and I attached a tube to it that routes back, and that's going to be for my boost solenoid, which is going to mount somewhere here eventually, and then mount to my wastegate. So we got to put the dump tube on there. I also want to switch around some of the ports. I think I'm going to switch this port and this port. So I just changed some of the fittings on the wastegate. I blocked off that top port because nothing can fit there, and I put one of these on the bottom and one of them on the top. So we're going to have that line coming from the manifold into the boost solenoid, out of the boost solenoid, and into the top of the wastegate. I'm also going to grab a T and stick it somewhere in here, and route to the bottom of the wastegate. Now I'm gonna put on the dump tube and see how that fits up. All right, so we got the dump tube down there. I think I'm just gonna zip tie this one brake line a little bit further away, and if anything I can put some heat shield on it to make sure that everything's nice and safe, but looks pretty good. Now we're gonna put on the O2 housing off the back of the turbo. And now we have the downpipe on, coming off the turbo, and the wastegate dump tube on. So next I wanna kinda throw on the intercooler piping on the hot side just to see if I can mount my power steering cooler somewhere around there. And yeah, intercooler piping. I just did the hot side. I do not have a cold side pipe yet, and it's gonna have to be a special one from Nice Time Racing because I have this throttle body. But power steering reservoir fits here. One of the lines, I'm gonna need to get a little extension to make it to the pump. Now I'm taking care of my oil cooler. I'm gonna be putting the filter somewhere back there that's just kind of mocked up. But the lines were way too long because this is like a universal kit. So I already shortened this line. This is either gonna go to the oil adapter or it'll go to the filter relocation thing. But I gotta shorten this one now, and I never really messed with AN lines, so this was a first for me. But all you gotta do is take these two things apart so you can take the fitting off, cut it to where you need. I tried a few different things. You want to use tape so that the hose does not fray all over the place. But at first I was using a handsaw and it kind of frayed still. And then I tried it with a cutting disc and it worked a lot cleaner. So we're gonna do it like that again, shorten this line. It'll go in there too. And then we can kind of mock up the radiator. So fast forward a little bit of time later, I mounted the lines coming off of both of my coolers and then tried to fit my new Koyo Rad radiator here. I also have the ISR fan shroud kit, which, fun fact, the ISR fan shroud kit does not fit with the Koyo radiator unless you cut out the corners here. So I trimmed that out, and at the bottom to fit the lower coolant pipe, and I just routed that for now. But so now we got the radiator put in, fans. I still have to do the wiring for the fans because this is how they come, but in order to connect it to my new chassis harness, it has these plugs on them. And Wiring Specialties supplied me with the correct plugs, so I just have to wire on a terminal, the wire, and put it on the plug. But so these are both the oil lines that come off of the cooler. I have to make one more to connect to my adapter plate to the filter relocation plate, and then we can try and finish that up. And yeah, that's what we'll start with. So I already put a fitting on this side of the hose, and I believe this is where I want to make my cut, which seems way longer than what we need, but it'll allow it to not kink and have a nice curve, because what we're trying to do, the plate I want to put somewhere around there, so I need a line to go from here to there, and I can't really do like a straight shot because the bend is weird. So I made a clean cut with the Sawzall. Now we're gonna put the other end of the fitting on. This thing is 2 pieces. We're gonna be taking it apart and putting the hose side on first. So you have this piece and this piece. I'm gonna peel this tape off and then press the hose into here. So now we got the fitting pressed all the way onto the hose. I'm gonna take it to the vise. So you don't have to use a vise. I just feel like it makes it easier. You're gonna screw the top portion of the fitting on. And just like that, ignore the scratch marks, we have an AN line. Let's go. All right, so I'm just going off of this diagram with the Grassroots oil cooler and the relocation kit. So going from this diagram, routed the lines coming from the cooler through the radiator, and then they go to their respective places. And my oil filter is gonna be down there so everything can be reached from the bottom at an easy location. And honestly, this is not super permanent, unless it gives me no problems. It seems like it's gonna be all right. This is how I could do the lines without having them get kinked. And then my oil pressure sensor mounts directly into here. I found this little mount on Amazon for my boost solenoid. It holds it and then provides a bolting location. So we can bolt it up right here and should be good. And just like that, we got the boost solenoid mounted up here, and we have the vacuum lines, or the boost lines rather. And then we're just gonna tuck everything up behind there. Yeah, now we can mess with the fans, wiring these buttons. So Wiring Specialties supplied us with all these pieces. So in order to do this, we have the plug, blue, black, which is going to connect to our fan, which there is blue and black. So what we're going to start off with doing is cutting off the head of these wires and stripping them. So the first thing I want to do, because it'll be easier before we have the exposed wire, is these little rubber grommets. You want to slip them onto the wire now. Alright, so I slid the rubber grommets onto the wires and then I stripped the plastic off of them. Now we're going to crimp on the terminals onto the wires with the crimping tool. And now we have the crimped on terminals to the wires. So now we can plug them into these plugs. Just make sure that we put them in the right spot corresponding with this plug. So I ended up making the plug on this one. This is how I routed the wire, and then it zip ties. Looks nice. I also did the other side while I was at it. The wires look good. And if you can't tell, I also routed all of the engine harness. So it comes out of the firewall, and then here I just have my idle air control valve sensors tied up. Also, they added a flex fuel sensor that's in there that I'm not using right now. And then it comes up, follows the firewall, comes through the intake manifold, plugs into all of my injectors, the NOx sensor, TPS sensor, coolant sensors, and all of that jazz. The map sensors back here, and then I have an IAT sensor that's going to plug into my intercooler piping. Then we come here to the cam angle sensor. Everything's routed really nicely. Then it keeps going behind the firewall, comes to all of my coil packs, and then it keeps going to my O2 sensor, which I kind of tuck the rest back there. And then it keeps going to my boost solenoid. And then I also routed the AN lines connecting to my oil catch can from the valve cover. The only thing left to do is to wire together the boost solenoid to my harness, which is very simple, I think. I looked it up and it says that polarity doesn't matter. So I guess one of these wires goes to one and the other goes to the other, but it's not like a specific one. So we'll just throw this together, make it look all nice. I think everything that's kind of by all these downpipes, I still have to add a zip tie here, but everything's gonna get a little bit of gold heat wrap. That way it's safe, but there's still a lot more to do. All right, so I just got the boost solenoid wired up, kind of tucked all these wires like that, and that's how it's gonna be. So that's one thing off the list. What I wanna do now is connect my power steering lines, and that we're gonna be doing from underneath the car. But the one issue I was running into, since I want to put my reservoir over here instead of where it was over here, is that this line does not want to make it to there. So I'm going to try to make it to there. Yeah, we'll see what I can do. Alright, so that 10N line that Chase Base supplies to go from the reservoir to the pump was not long enough, and I would rather just make a new one. So I'm going to have to order 2 90-degree bend fittings, and then I can cut some hose and make a line for that. But we can still connect the rest. The other line that comes to the reservoir is routed from the cooler, and then the other line from the cooler down here is going to follow the bottom frame rail all the way to the other side. That I want to get underneath the car to do. I connected the power steering lines that run to the rack. One of them come directly from the cooler and the other one comes here from the pump. But like I said, I want to get a new fitting so I can make a 10N line for that other one. In the meanwhile, I put the shifter back in the car. It's ISR short throw. It's all tightened up. So now I can put the other things on top of it. The dust cover and the whole center console back in the car. So we're gonna throw the shifter back in, and yeah. All right, so we got the interior all back together now. It looks freaking great. And that tidies up the inside of the car, other than having to put the seats back in. The only other thing left to do engine-wise is I have 2 more grounds for my Chase Base kit. One, we're gonna ground off the casing for the alternator, and the other we're gonna ground on the back side of the head to the firewall utilizing this bolt. We'll do that and the other side, and then in the next video we'll probably be working on getting the car tuned. I have to put in all the sensors in the computer for my new harness and ECU and everything, and then we gotta get this thing ready to start and take it to a tuner. So I'm so stoked with how far this car has come. I got everything I wanted to do done to it. Now we just have to hope that it all works in the end. Thanks for watching, and look forward to making the next video. Hopefully we'll be starting the car. Have a great rest of your day. Peace out.